I welcome you to another visit over a few verses from the book of Romans. Today we'll be looking at Romans chapter 14, the first 9 verses. In Romans 13, the Apostle Paul gives us some direct commandments, which we don't have a choice. Either we obey or disobey. He says, for instance, let every person be subject to the governing authorities. That's not a matter of opinion or judgment. It's a command that we're to obey. But in chapter 14 that we're to look at today, Paul is teaching them and us as well, as to how to deal with matters of opinion over which we might disagree. And so we need to remember that all the way through. This whole chapter is dealing with matters of opinion. He says, as for the one who is weak in faith, welcome him, but not to quarrels over opinion. The weakness of his faith seems to be not in the strength of his conscience, because that seems to be very strong, but rather the weakness seems to be in a lack of understanding. Some in Paul's day still felt that the Old Testament rules and regulations about certain days and certain meats still applied, but that really wasn't the case. Those had been set aside, but some, because of the weakness of their understanding, still held to those and may have even been despising or judging those who no longer held on to those. And he gives an illustration. In verse 2, he says, one person believes that he may eat anything. That was probably the newly converted Gentiles who didn't have any connection with the Old Testament rules and regulations, but he believes he can eat anything, while the weak person eats only vegetables. He especially felt he should avoid meat that had been offered to idols. In another place, Paul talks about the fact that an idol is nothing, therefore the meat is not in any way changed, and perfectly okay to eat the meat even that has been offered to idols. But some still felt that they should not, and so there was a disagreement. Some felt that they could eat, some felt they must not. And here's his solution. He says, let not the one who eats despise the one who abstains, and let not the one who abstains pass judgment on the one who eats, for God has welcomed him. In fact, God had welcomed them both. It was a matter of judgment, a matter of opinion, and they must not judge each other, look down on each other. He says, who are you to pass judgment on the servant of another? It's before his own master that he stands or falls, and he will be upheld, for the Lord is able to make him stand. Now, the matters of opinion back then was, as I've said, whether to eat meat offered to idols, whether to observe certain days. The matters of opinion today are different. For instance, there are those who still consider Sunday as a day on which we should do no unnecessary work. But then there are others, after going to church, feel that the rest of the Lord's Day can include whatever work they might want. That's a matter of judgment, a matter of opinion. And we need to leave each one to his own opinion and judgment about that, and not judge or look down on each other. And Paul gives another illustration in verse 5. He says, one person, as I've just said, esteems one day better than another, while another esteems all days alike. Now here's a very important instruction from the Apostle Paul. He says each one should be fully convinced in his own mind. About these matters of judgment, we need to know where we stand. We need to know what we believe. We cannot straddle the fence. We must come down on one side or the other. And once we have, we must follow our conscience. And that's one of the main lessons from this whole chapter, that whatever we believe to be the right thing, that's the thing for us to do. Each one, as he says, should be fully convinced in his own mind. The one who observes the day observes it to the honor of the Lord. The one who eats, eats in honor of the Lord, since he gives thanks to God. While the one who abstains, abstains in honor of the Lord and gives thanks to God. Whichever side of a matter of opinion we're on, we're all, and we should, trying simply to do what we believe the Lord wants us to do. In matters of opinion and judgment, we must select one side or the other, know what we believe, and follow what we believe. But be careful not to despise or judge someone who happens to believe otherwise. These are all matters of judgment and opinion. We should have our own opinion and follow our convictions, but leave others to their own convictions. Verse 7, he says, "For none of us lives to himself, none of us dies to himself. If we live, we live to the Lord. If we die to the Lord. So then, whether we live or whether we die, we are the Lord's." That's the important thing. Jesus bought us with his blood on the cross. We belong to him. We are God's children, and we are obligated to obey the best that we know what God wants us to do. Rather than being judged by one another, we'll be judged by God. For this is to this end, verse 9 says, Christ died and lived again, that he might be Lord both of the dead and of the living. These are not very many verses, but there's some things that we can learn. There's some things that we can learn from this section, and they would be, it's okay to have different opinions about matters of opinion. But as I've already said, we need to know where we stand and follow that. We must not despise or judge someone who happens to be of the opposite opinion. Now, of course, as I've pointed out, this cannot be true of matters of clear doctrine. The commandments, the only choice we have with clear commandments is either to obey or not obey. But matters of judgment and matters of opinion, we can have opposite opinions. But we're not to judge or despise each other. We must not raise our opinions to the level of law. Sometimes those who have one opinion say to others, you must agree with my opinion and do what I believe we ought to do. No, if it's a matter of opinion, each one is left to his own conclusions. Paul introduces this chapter by saying that it's wrong to quarrel over matters of opinion. We must not, and some do, spend a lot of time quarreling and bickering over matters that are mere opinions. Paul says don't do that. Leave each to his own opinion. We can be right in our opinion, but wrong in our attitude. And that's what Paul is condemning in this chapter. Not quarreling about matters of opinion, not despising or judging each other. Ultimately, the goal that Paul is trying to reach for them and us as well is peace and harmony and unity. That's important, and over again, Paul points out that we need to be united, we need to be in agreement, we need to be at peace, we need to love each other. I hope these comments have helped you to understand that little section better, and I always enjoy the visit with you. May God bless you.